I prepared absolutely nothing. Didn't know I was going to say this, but it's absolutely wonderful for me. Starting my Jaguar apprenticeship in 1954, that's before most people here put a sparkle in somebody's eye, and going through 6 years of pain, grief, and all of the usual things that apprentices were put through. But at the same time, the apprenticeship at Jaguar was, I would say, and still is, #1 in the industry worldwide. It really is. But it taught us a lot of things. You know, it taught me not to go down to the stores for a bucket of spot weld. And I got a clamp around the ear, and then when I was sent down 2 weeks later for a rubber hammer, I refused to go, so I got another clamp around the ear from Joe Barker, because they did have rubber hammers, but the body panel in the shape, so you could never win. But that was life at Jaguar. We were all one small team, and it was great fun. In respect to the XJ13, I was very, very proud to be chosen by Lofty and Bill Haynes, actually, and Ford Bailey at the time, to join with Malcolm Sayer and people like Norman to take the project through to full race competitiveness. And as Peter's already said earlier, Sir William had an absolute paranoia, excuse me using the word, but he would not allow the car to be seen out in the daylight, hardly, and we weren't allowed to test it in the daylight initially. Norman and I were terrible problems, especially Norman, of course, who've got to do the development testing, and in the end we prevailed upon him through Lofty and Bill Haynes to hire Myra for the whole weekend and exclude everybody else from the car industry. And I can always remember Norman and I moaning and sulking at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, trying to get some coffee down our throats at 4 o'clock in a very cold, freezing morning, but looking forward to a day's testing. But at the same time, that testing itself could only take us so far, because on the banking, as you know, Norman and I were talking about it earlier today, you know, I can always remember distinctly sitting in the passenger seat, and Norman always used to sit me in this side, of course. He wouldn't let me sit that side, so that was his job. But the point is, I sat in that side, and I had to take some notes down at the same time as, of course, the fact we were recording certain things. But it was pretty basic testing, generally. But it was developing the car right through all its braking systems. One particular day, we were there, Norman, it was pouring with rain, and we got brake testing on the schedule, which wasn't a particularly bright day, but nevertheless good for the conditions that could prevail at Le Mans. I remember at one stage when Norman damaged his right arm, and he couldn't drive. Well, in fact, he was struggling with even with just his left hand and arm. But so what I did is Bill Haynes and myself, we borrowed a couple of ex-Jaguar apprentices, which were David Hobbs and Dick Atwood, and got them to thrash it round the banking. And I can remember sitting alongside David Hobbs, and Norman, in preparation for that, had already prepared me, for somebody in the experimental department with a sadistic sense of humour, had prepared me with a piece of foam to sit on. There was no seat like this. Piece of foam to sit on, and a piece of foam down the left-hand side. And I wonder what that was for, until, of course, by the time you've done about 15 laps and they've got the temperatures very, very high, the hot water pipe from the radiator was going right up my left leg. And of course I finished up with a scalded left leg, but it just shows you the sort of basics that we got down to. But even then, when the car is at that sort of angle on the banking, as you guys know, you've got immense centrifugal force, centripetal force, downward thrust, to the extent that I remember, I've still got the notebook today, and the notebook has sort of like, starts writing and then goes into squiggles and then snap, because the downward force was so great, it broke every pencil you could use. And then I started using borrows, and of course then the ink wanted to go the opposite way, and then the pen broke in half. So it's very, very difficult trying to get ourselves into a situation where we could record everything that we wanted to. And at the same time, though, we were doing an awful lot of lateral jig, an awful lot of yaw on it, wasn't there? And what we wanted to do also was a lot of high-speed straight line running for the Mulsanne straight.